हेलो। हाँ ठीक। हेलो। हेलो। हेलो।
Hello.
Ma'am, nothing. We are just testing the mic, ma'am. So,
Okay.
Ma'am, I'm just introducing, so you may please bear with us for a minute, and then Mamta ji will conversate with you.
Yeah, sure.
Good evening, one and all. On behalf of National Gallery of Modern Art, Bengaluru, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, and Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, I welcome you all on this special occasion of Gandhi Jayanthi. Today we are presenting a deeply reflective session, sharing found memories. Here we will hear from two remarkable voices, Miss Mamta Sagar, a renowned poet, translator, and academician, and also founder of Kavya Sanjay. We have with us Miss Ela Gandhi, peace activist, social worker, and granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi. Madam, firstly, welcome to India. Welcome to National Gallery of Modern Art. I request Mamta ji to kindly take from here. Ma'am, welcome you again for the second session. And once again, welcome you all for today's session. Thank you.
Um, is it echoing? Thank you, NGMA, for having precious Ela Gandhi with us today and allowing me to converse with Ela Gandhi. As everybody knows, Ela Gandhi is the... No, this is muted. I think NGMA mic should be muted. It's fine. We are really honored to have Ela Gandhi with us. It's exactly 25 years since I met her in Durban when I went as part of representing India for Poetry Africa. And she invited me home, and I was just holding a frame in my left hand and a little design pouch in my right hand. In the meanwhile, Ela Gandhi came and told me that it belonged to her grandparents. And it was like goosebumps. I was holding Mahatma Gandhi's frame and Kasturba's pouch. So it all story begins from there. And now, Ilaji, I want you to please share a little more about you being Mahatma Gandhi's granddaughter, because today, the whole of October, India is celebrating Gandhi Jayanthi. And today, especially NGMA Bangalore, National Gallery of Modern Art, Bangalore, with Kavya Sanjay, we are having a blast. We had readings of poems and by poets and by other poets from different Indian languages. Later on, we also had imaginary stories around Mahatma Gandhi. Now, the last session will be a conversation with you. I request you to please go ahead and share. We have an august audience here waiting to listen to you. And please go ahead and share your...
Thank you so much for inviting me to this function. I have read about, what you have been doing in the past few days, and in fact, what many groups are doing throughout this month of October. Indeed, I think today in our world, when we look at the situation around the world, Gandhiji's ideas are so relevant, so important today for the people. Some of his teachings, of compassion, of love, of non-violence in particular, of taking care of nature as well. All these ideas were developed in South Africa, and I am so happy that I was born here in South Africa and learned about his work, which he developed in South Africa. These ideas came about, were born here. He wasn't born with the ideas in India. He came to South Africa and began to learn about these things and then implement it into his own life. So, the one important lesson for me from Gandhiji was that if you have an idea, if you think about something, do it and live it before you can teach anyone else. So be the change you wish to see. Is, even though he might not have said it, but it is his teaching. Throughout his life, he demonstrated this practically, that every idea he had, he put it into practice before he asked anybody else to do it. So that, I think, basically was my experience. My mother told me a lot of stories about Gandhiji before I actually met him, and I met him at the age of between 6 and 7. My family, for the first time, took me to India. I think it was the first time. They might have taken me when I was a little baby. But as far as I can remember, that was the first time I can remember going to India and meeting
What did you call
Gandhiji,
him?
staying with him. And by then, my grandmother, unfortunately, had passed away. So I didn't have the privilege of meeting her, but I did meet Gandhiji.
What did you call Gandhiji?
I can't hear you now.
Oh,
Okay.
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
What did you call Gandhiji?
Bapuji.
Bapuji. Okay, how
Bapuji.
nice.
Yeah.
And as a 6 or 7 year old, what actually do you remember which is very intimate to a grandfather and a grandson daughter?
Well, I was there in 1947, and and I spent 3 months in the ashram, particularly at Sevagram, and for a short while we were in Pune with him because my mother was receiving some nature cure treatment for her condition. And so that's the time that I spent with him. What I remember is he was very loving, and he gave us, uh, attention, and sort of inhibited attention. We were there with him, and we could speak to him. He would listen, and he would even act on what we said. So he respected us and he gave us that kind of attention. Why I say this is I have some anecdotes and maybe I'll share them with you. At that time, Gandhiji was struggling with the transition, to independence in India. They were discussing a whole lot of things. There was also the partition question. In all that, worries that he had, he still, daily gave us attention. We had a certain time when we could sit with him and talk to him. And one day, after staying at Sevagram for several days, um, as a little child, I asked him, why do you call this Sevagram? And he said that because we served the people over here, and gram means, a place. So it means a place of service. And I thought about it and I said, Bapuji, you made a mistake. You should call it Gola Gram. Gola means pumpkin. And I said, this place has got more pumpkins than anything else. So he was, he laughed, but he asked me, why do you say this? And I told him that every day for breakfast, lunch, supper, we have pumpkin. And so I see so many pumpkins here. That's why I'm suggesting that you should call it Kolagram.
How beautiful. Yeah.
He laughed at that, but that same evening at the prayer service, mass prayer service, he said that, when I talk about simplicity, simple meals, I don't mean that you have to have the same thing day in and day out. And he told them about the story, and he told them that this is not my teaching. You must have variety, plant other vegetables and cook them so that you can have variety. And that showed to me that he didn't just, take my talk as something that you can dismiss. Instead, he took it and acted on it. How often do we do that?
Yes.
And I've often thought, children come and say things. Sometimes we are not even listening because we are distracted by other things. And we don't really pay that much attention to our children. But that's a lesson that Gandhiji taught me at that age, that it's important to listen and to understand why a person is saying whatever they are saying. Take it seriously and act on it.
Yes. And that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And
Your sound is off again. I don't know.
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. And you were saying yesterday that there was a celebration in the Phoenix settlement in South Africa. And you grew up in the Phoenix settlement. And would you please like to tell us a little bit about what is it and when was it started and all about Phoenix settlement connected with Mahatma Gandhi and your family?
So in 1904, that's, Gandhiji came to South Africa in 1893. And in 1904, that's 11 years after he arrived here, he decided to change his lifestyle. He was living in the center of town. He had a beautiful house with electricity, water connected, in the house, and all the basic services that people in urban societies have. He chose to go and live on a farm in a rural area. And this rural area happened to be very close to two African, communities. On the one side, there was the Dube community. Mr. Dube was actually, later on, he became the first president of the African National Congress. So he was a neighbor of Bapuji. And on the other side was Mr. Shembe, who was a spiritual leader of many hundreds of people, thousands actually, one of the biggest churches in South Africa. And he was the leader of this group. And he, led them to pray, to become spiritual, to also observe nonviolence. All three of them respected all religions, shared, religious understanding with other religious groups. and it enhanced their own understanding of their religion. So they had no objection to other religious groups. And, so there was this, local African religious group. There was Mr. Dubé, who was a Christian, and Gandhiji, who was a Hindu. And three of them had discussions about, must have had discussions about their beliefs. And we think that that actually enriched their own understanding. So all three of them believed in this. They also were very ardent followers of their religion, and each one of them expressed the fact that nonviolence is part of our religion. Love of our neighbors is part of our religion. And so love, nonviolence, compassion, these were the basic teachings of all religious groups. And this is what they taught their communities. So Gandhiji chose that particular area to build his settlement. He bought a 100-acre piece of land and he invited his friends to come there and experiment on a new way of living. Close to the land, simplicity, equality, because everybody drew the same wage. Nobody was given extra or anything like that. Everyone was given a small piece of land which they cultivated, and they lived together. There was both individual living, they could cook in their own homes, they had their family, and so on. But there was also a communal aspect. Sometimes they would gather together and have meals together, most often in Gandhiji's home or Bapuji's house, and Kasturba was the leader in that. Lots of people after her, passing have written about her and people who lived with her. And they said that Gandhiji might have had a lot of influence outside in the world. But when it came to Phoenix settlement, Kasturba was the person who led everything there. She was the boss, so to speak. So, yeah, that was Phoenix settlement, and that's where I grew up. Today it's a lot different, and I'll tell you about that later, but that's the story of Phoenix.
How beautiful. And to imagine something like this, which can exist beyond religious and discriminations of any kind, itself is something which is very precious and we need it today. In today's time, it's, I think, since morning we have been feeling that Gandhiji is alive and he has to be alive because we are alive. People like us who think such things are kind of part of whatever his ideologies are. And your father, Manilal Gandhi, was assigned to take care of Phoenix City. Please tell us a little bit about Manilal Gandhi and your mom, Sushila Mashurwala. So we would like to know more about Mahatma Gandhi's, the entire family, like Mahatma Gandhi, Manilal Gandhi, Ela Gandhi. Please.
So my father was quite young. I think he was just about 20, 19 years old when Gandhiji asked him to come and, help with Phoenix settlement. Gandhiji himself had returned in 1915. 14, actually, he left Phoenix settlement. And by the time he got to India, it was 1915. And then he got involved in the Indian struggle. But the people in South Africa wanted him to return. And he said, "No, I can't return, but I will send my son." And he asked, and initially, my father, Manila Gandhi, and this other son, the third son, Ramdas Gandhi, both of them agreed to come. But then Ramdas Bhai Kaka, decided that he didn't like things living in Africa so much. So he wanted to return, and he returned back to India. But my father continued to stay, and he then managed, he was given three responsibilities. Number one, to manage Phoenix settlement and continue the experiment on living close to the earth without, the pollution, the amenities that you have in the urban areas, and so on. So for a long time, Phoenix remained like that. The second thing was to run the newspaper that Bapuji had started and which was run from the Phoenix settlement. So he was, he was responsible for running that. And the third thing was the political work that Gandhiji had started. So participate in the political work. And my father did all three. So with the result, he had been to prison 10 times in his life, uh, you know, um, defying the unjust laws in South Africa. And he ran the Phoenix settlement in the same way with, looking after the land, growing vegetables, depending on, your own production on the land. And also simplicity and working together with other people. A lot of the original residents left after Gandhiji left. So there were very few residents who continued the same philosophy, but there were people who came and lived there, worked in the press, and to a large extent, they would follow Gandhian ideas.
Um, and you
So I'll
grew
tell
up
you
there.
about my mom a little later. My mother.
Okay. And you grew up there in this settlement. Can you share at least one or two of your memories of growing up there?
Okay, so my memories are connected to my mother as well. My mother came much later, after my father was there for several years. He then got married. The marriage was arranged by my grandfather. And, his friend was Kishore Lal Mashruwala. And my mother happened to be a niece of Kishore Lal Mashruwala. So he arranged the marriage, and my mother was only 19 years old at the time. Came to South Africa, and my father was taught by Bapuji that gender discrimination was not part of our life. This is a partner, and she's an equal partner. And you share her work, and she shares your work. So, having come to South Africa, my mother learned how to do all the work in the press, on the farm, in politics. She began to, participate in whatever way she could. And so, she was quite an independent person. And that's how we were brought up too. I had one brother and one sister, and all three of us learned everything. We participated in all. My brother was a very good cook. He could clean, and all that. There was no division of labor, no roles for women and men. We did everything together. It was a partnership. So my father and mother have that kind of relationship. We were brought up in that way. And we learned all the uh, lessons that Bapuji, had taught my parents
What
about
what kind
respecting
of
the
schooling did you have? Was there
So
a school?
initially, my parents, because schooling in South Africa was very much apartheid, linked. And apartheid was about, white supremacy, and black people were all inferior, and, that Indians were a problem in South Africa, and things like that. That is how the education system, it was based on those kinds of ideas. And so my parents felt that it wasn't good for us to study in these government schools. And so initially I was home taught. And then at about age of 9, I, protested. I wanted to go to school because all the children in our neighborhood went to school. And whilst homeschooling might be very good, which was really very good, it taught me critical thinking. It taught me, truth from false information, how to discriminate between truth and lies or truth and false information. So I had learned that by age 9 by homeschooling. But I didn't get the socialization that children need. Socializing with other children, being able to be with them at school, experiencing what they experience, and so on. So I protested, and my parents reluctantly agreed, and they thought that I'll only last a few months, maybe. And I would say, no, it's too difficult to go to the school. But I carried on, much to their surprise, and uh, completed my high school and university.
Yeah. And I would like to know a little more about your mother.
So my mother, she was in India itself. She had participated from a very young age to, with uh, the Swadeshi movement, where, they were asking people not to take alcohol and things like that. So they would picket shops, where they sold alcohol. My mother was, once her sister and her were picked up and left in a bush far away from the city. In those days, there was no telephones or cell phones. So they had to make their way somehow from those bushes back home. So it was really a daunting experience for the two little girls, but they managed and they continued with this. So my mother had a lot of courage,
I think
and I
your
think that was
I think your parents must have told many stories about
yes.
their growing up, about Indian nationalist movement and their participation, and their being in South Africa because of India and Bapu. And which is the best story that you liked, that you heard from
So I
them?
think, hmm, I think, the story about my aunt was a wonderful story. My aunt, who was younger than my mother, who remained in India, she she became, she was a kind of social worker, and she began a ashram, work in a rural area where she realized how girl children were being discriminated against. They were not being able to get education. Child marriages was happening, and a lot of problems that they were experiencing in their homes as well, girl children. And so she started an ashram in Madan, which is still running now. And it was a school for girl children, a boarding school where they could come and stay there. And sometimes girls took shelter because in their homes they were being abused and so on. And they would come and stay there. So those stories about my aunt and her ashram were just fascinating for me. And eventually, when I got married, I said I want to get married in that ashram. And so my marriage was in Madan.
How
Ashram.
nice. And you married Meva Ram Gobind, and
That's
who also grew up in Phoenix City settlement, right? And
well, he was a neighbor in
oh,
Inanda.
how nice.
Inanda, the area that, where Phoenix settlement is situated.
Okay.
So,
How did you
mm.
people meet? And so nice to hear that you got married in your aunt's ashram.
Mm. So we met because we were neighbors and we knew each other. He was a friend of my brother's and often used to come home. We used to, and we fell in love, and that's how we got married. Mm.
Um, Both of you have been part of the anti-apartheid movement, as far as I know, and you were under house arrest for 9 years, right?
That's
Uh,
right.
so, would you like to share about those moments of house arrest and the entire turmoil that was going out because of the anti-apartheid movement and the apartheid and where did the Indians? What is the role of the Indians? Because there were black people, there were white rulers. Of course, Indians are also part of citizens of South Africa, but as part of the colored with the black people. So, would you please like to share your experiences of the entire movement and what kind of resistance did happen during that time?
So apartheid was applied differently to each race group, and that was largely to divide us. So, there would be no sort of relationship between the different race groups, coloreds, whites, Indians, Africans, and so on. African people would be the worst. The way things were, the colored and Indian people would get a little better treatment, and African people would get the worst treatment. So, for instance, we had old age pensions that used to be given. So the whites would get the largest share of old age pension. And then coloreds and Indians would get about a quarter of what the whites were getting. And then the African people would get like about 1/10 of what the white people were getting. So when you calculate that, the 1/10 is so little. It was less than 1/10. It was so little that they couldn't afford. It was, economically uh, sort of, bad practice to pay every month. They would have to pay more to the staff than they were giving to the people. So they used to pay the African people once in 2 months because the pension was so low. That's how everything, housing, education, everything was divided in that same ratio, with the African people right at the bottom and the African women right at the very bottom of the ladder. So our work basically, what we did in the liberation struggle. Firstly, Gandhiji had established Natal Indian Congress, and we were part of the Congress movement. And in 1960, when we got married in 61 actually, January of 61. And in 1960, the organizations were banned. Natal Indian Congress wasn't banned, but people, the leadership was banned and house arrested and listed and so on. Their whole movement was restricted. So when we got married, there was a lot of strife. And as students at university, we were very active. I didn't participate as much as my husband did, although I did participate in some of the demonstrations and so on. But my husband took a greater leadership role. He became president of the XRC at one stage and so on. So he played quite a crucial role. And because of that, soon after our marriage, a few months after our marriage, he was banned. He was served with a banning order. And banning order restricts your movement quite a lot, not as house arrest, but the banning order itself restricts the movement. So for 5 years, as a married couple, we couldn't go out much. We couldn't, social life was restricted. You couldn't meet, have friends over, or go to visit friends, go to meetings, and all those kinds of things. So that was limited. And my banning order came much later. My husband was already banned for 2 terms. And then the third term was when I got house arrested for 5 years. And then it followed with my husband also getting house arrested. He was banned initially for 5 years, but after his banning order expired, which was, during the time I was serving house arrest, he got house arrested as well. And then, we both were banned after that, after the 5-year term. So 9 years I served, and he served many more years of banning. And my children had to suffer all that consequence. So it was tough, but we were not deterred. I joined the women's organization and was part of the executive of the Natal Organization of Women. And we worked largely with women, but with all women. So in our organization, we had African, colored, and Indian women. NIC was Indian, and I also became an executive member of the NIC. Yeah.
Yeah. And you developed a 24 hours program against domestic violence and safety of women. When did this happen, and how did you come to that?
Okay, so in 1994, there was this democratic dispensation. I was, sorry, just 1 second. I was elected to parliament, and, at that time, a few years after my election to parliament, being in parliament, we had constituencies. So we were, although you don't stand in a constituency, you're on a list. I was on the ANC list, and that's how I was a member of parliament. So I didn't stand for elections as an individual. But after that, we were given different constituencies, and my constituency was in Phoenix. And beginning to work there in Phoenix, I found that, whilst there were organizations that were taking care of a number of other things like child welfare societies and, various organizations in the area, there was nothing for women who were being abused. And that women abuse was quite, rampant in the area. And so we decided that we should have this service because there were two things that we learned from having discussions with people. People told us that, they are too shy to go and report. They continue to be abused and they keep quiet about it. Families also don't want them to go and report and so on. And so gets to the level women often, become victims of killing, and so on. So we decided that telephone service was an easy way in which women could communicate without having to go out of their home, without having to, face somebody face to face. You could speak to a person, and on the phone, you can be honest and tell them everything that happened. So we found that it was a very, very useful service. And that's how we set up this. We trained people, volunteers in the community, who were trained to answer these phone calls, and we used to take turns. All of us had, different times and days when we would be responsible for taking calls. And that's how we ran this
Yeah,
24 hours.
and going back to apartheid and anti-apartheid movements, um, how did Gandhi tradition as a tool allow you to contest with the apartheid system? Uh, did
So
you? Yeah.
our struggle, the South African struggle, had four pillars, four things that happened in the South African struggle, and all were sort of quite important part of the struggle, the liberation struggle. So the one was the violent, the army that South Africa had, which was in exile and had an armed wing there. The second was the anti-apartheid movement, in which the world community assisted with boycotts, cultural boycotts, sports boycotts, economic boycotts, and so on. And those were quite powerful as well. The third was internally we had an underground movement, which was between the army and what was happening inside. So they would sabotage like basic services and so on to indicate to the government that we are here and we are very much still struggling for our liberation, and we're not going to tolerate apartheid. And then the fourth was the nonviolent struggle, the mass democratic struggle in the country, which was nonviolent, the mass democratic struggle, where we involved every sector across the board, all race groups. We had, students, civic organizations, religious organizations, sports organizations, and so on. Everybody was involved in this mass democratic struggle. Each one would, of course, focus on their particular areas, whether it was community. Each community would organize their areas. Sectors would organize the sports organizations, to insist on boycott, not to participate in white sports, segregated sports, and so on, to give legitimacy to the government, because the government tried to get legitimacy by offering, the tricameral system, offering some, little Bantustan homelands and things like that. And these were all boycotted by us. With the result, like with us, with the Indian and the colored community, we boycotted the elections. And very few people elected those government bodies, like the House of Delegates that was set up in the tricameral system. There was local government, which was comprised of Indian, separate local governments for Indian areas and colored areas. And we said we're not going to participate in any segregated. So we had to work in the community to explain to the community why we are boycotting. And often we faced, the police and, harassment. We were arrested many times. And so, but we continued, and that's how we got our liberation. So
As a
that's
member
where
of
Bapuji's ideas in that mass democratic struggle was non-violent, courageous. Courage was very important. People worked on those bases.
Yeah. As a member of African National Congress, you accompanied Mandela for the first time when he visited India. And Mandela was a great fan of Mahatma Gandhi. And would you want to share these three dots? You, Madiba, and Mahatma.
So we had a very close relationship with Mr. Mandela because, firstly, Madiba, whilst he was in Robben Island, we had called for release. Firstly, it was release of all prisoners, political prisoners, and then it was release Mandela, because we knew that he won't come out unless his colleagues came out. So we had the Release Mandela Committee. And this was, we had a powerful movement throughout the country, the Release Mandela movement, and we used to have meetings and, whip up community support for it, and, that call was loud and clear. So, he knew that we were working on these different, aspects. Then also in the women's organization, we worked closely with Winnie Mandela, with Albertina Sisulu, and other women leaders in the community. So that was another, way in which we got to know him, because I didn't know him before he went to Robben Island. I was still very young at the time, and by 1960 the organizations were banned and he was underground. 63 he went to Robben Island. So, I wasn't sort of didn't know him, heard about him. But personally, I didn't know him. But once he was in prison, and just when all these negotiations were continuing, he invited me as one of the people to come and visit him. We had various delegations who went to visit him, and in this one delegation, I went with Albertina Sisulu was with me, and then there were some UDF people, and that was on the day before he was released. And we spent the whole morning and afternoon in his house in that prison compound, and had discussions with him. And that's when I got to know him and saw, and he told me that he read about Gandhiji once he was in Robben Island, and that he, really admired him, and so was very much inspired by Bapuji's story. So that's when I met him and got to know him. And then when we had the negotiations, I was part of the team. In the Codesa was the first part of the negotiations. I was chosen by the Natal Indian Congress as one of the representatives and was there. So he was also part of that process. And we would often meet him and have discussions with him and so on. And then later in the negotiating team, I was also part of that. And then I was elected on the Transitional Executive Council, which was set up to oversee that the elections were free and fair. And that particularly women came out to vote, to make sure that they were not intimidated and so on. So that was sort of my role in that Transitional Executive Council. And then when we went to Parliament, I got to know him, and he then, when he was visiting India, he felt that, Uncle Kathy Katrada, Ahmed Katrada, who was with him in prison, was also one of the people who traveled with him. And I was also asked to go with him. I really thought it was quite a privilege, and, was really very happy to be there with him and experience that.
Yeah. And I also know that you run a newspaper called Satyagraha.
Yes.
When did you start it? How?
The Satyagraha.
And I've seen copies of it.
You've seen it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we started Satyagraha in 2002. In 2002, we already began looking at how South Africa was going on a downward trend, that things were not really, kind of on track for the kind of liberation that we had dreamt about, real liberation for all the people of South Africa. There was poverty, unemployment, people were discontented, people were apathetic about ANC, and already, the euphoria of 1994, when like 90% of the community turned up for election. By 1999 and 2002, that enthusiasm had dropped, and people began to feel frustrated and unhappy. So we felt that a newspaper would be a good idea, a community newspaper. Prior to that, there were many community newspapers that we used to run. And so, we learned the power of the media. And we felt that let's start this newspaper to encourage community to begin to learn about the struggle, about, and participate. Because not participating is, it's kind of a doom. We are doomed after that because we are not participating. We can only grow if everyone comes together in a united effort to build the society. And so this is what Satyagraha was meant to achieve. We ran it for a long time, and then because print media became quite difficult to run, we decided to go, virtual or, digital media for a while. And then even that became quite difficult to, uh, send around and actually to target, the target audience, the youth and the women and the poor. We didn't quite, were not able to reach them. We were able to reach another group. And then we might have had to shift the emphasis of what we were writing and how we were writing. And so we felt, no, let's give that up. But now we have, um, a newspaper which is called Inanda, Inanda,
Inanda.
which is the place that, so our focus is on that area. But we are trying, all our, like on the 2nd of October, our observations that we had for Gandhi Jayanthi and Day of Nonviolence was focused with, the idea of Inanda community and our neighbors. So we had all the key role players in that area at that. So our newspaper is also that focus.
How nice.
Although it goes out to many people, but that is just to inform them of what's happening in our area. And what's happening in Inanda is replicated in all the townships.
Yeah.
So, that is the story of South Africa now.
Ilaji, as a granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi, who is one of the finest politicians India has ever seen, and as a daughter of Manilal Gandhi and Sushila, who managed ideologies of Mahatma Gandhi and the Phoenix settlement and became a part of the local community. And as a politician, who you have been part of African National Congress, we have got a lot of information from you. There is so much to talk, but we have no time. And on behalf of National Gallery of Modern Art, um, Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Tourism, and Kavya Sanjay, I would like to thank you. Thanks a lot. And uh, I hope all the audience really, really enjoyed meeting you today. And I would like to just turn this towards our audience.
Oh, namaste. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to? Yeah. Before we end, I would invite the director of National Gallery of Modern Art to just thank you. Yeah. 1 minute.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, ma'am. It has been truly our pleasure to host you at National Gallery of Modern Art, and it was wonderful to hear from your experience, your interactions at Phoenix Settlement and with Mahatma Ji, and a very eye-opening and very inspiring. And we hope to take away a lot of lessons from this conversation and this beautiful interaction that we had. And thank you for making our Gandhi Jayanthi celebration truly meaningful this time through your valuable contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All the best wishes to you all.
Let's stay in touch. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to Mamta Sagar ji for this wonderful conversation. I think it was the fond memories is not only to look at the journey, but to learn to follow the philosophy of Gandhi ji, and it was very honoring for NJM and for all the audience to be part of it and to learn so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to Kavya Sanjay, and thank you to all the participating poets for the morning session. Before we conclude, I have an announcement. On 10th at 5:30, we invite you to join us for a presentation by Sheila Gowda, recipient of Sam Gilliam Award 2025. Uh, excuse me, followed by a conversation with Ellen Talur. So kindly join us for this talk. And I also request you to kindly go through the ongoing exhibition, Kal Netra, Living Universe of Seema Koili, which will be until 12th of this month. So please catch up by that time. Thank you once again. Please follow us on our social media handles for further events, updates on events and exhibitions. Thank you.